Oh, okay. And you know why that's
Yeah.
happening, right? Needs to be turned down. And that is part of the technology that we're dealing with here on our podcast. This is the third episode of
Inherently human.
Inherently Human. And you had a kind of a good definition of what the podcast actually
what
is.
we're doing here. What we're doing here is saying all the things you already know, but we're just doing it for you. You decided to listen to a topic you're fully aware of, and we're just bringing some different light to it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be as though all of us, you people who aren't in this room, who might be listening, and us, were having a beer and talking about stuff, whatever.
Right.
Whatever comes to our mind, and we think that we usually get on a topic when Aidan DeBoard, who is here
me,
with me,
yeah.
Jim Newman, our experience is that when we talk, the conversation actually goes somewhere.
Usually, sometimes, most of the time, in fact. Something I wanted to ask now that it is the spookiest month of the year, October, effectively October 5th, I believe. I don't keep track of my days. It is the 5th. Outstanding.
Yeah, it is. My watch confirms that.
So you have roughly 3 weeks to be as spooky as possible. How do you plan on being super spooky?
Boy, you're really throwing me a curveball there. I haven't really thought of that. I have Halloween memories, but you know, I'm so divorced from going out on the street and asking for candy. Oh, that's the other issue here. See, Aidan is 20.
Yeah.
I'm 72, and I met Aidan at the Portland State University Rec Center pool, and I was doing my resistance training, and he was a lifeguard.
I
So
was sitting there watching him chest deep. This is the third time I've seen him with his shirt on.
in his entire life. But in terms of Halloween, my most pleasant recent memories of Halloween, and I really do like the holiday, is watching kids either come to the door or one Halloween recently, I was in Multnomah Village, which is a little suburban town center, where all of the merchants invited kids to come on Halloween and trick or treat the stores. And I mean, you wouldn't think necessarily that that was anything, but the kids were so darling because they were absolutely excited that they were walking into a store, I guess, because they were getting free stuff.
I mean, you walk in anywhere that has the promise of free stuff, you're going to be a little bit excited.
And
And
as
it
a
only-
child,
Oh, yeah. And it only makes it better because you're in some super awesome costume.
And they all were Spider-Man or something like that.
Oh, how Marvel has taken over.
But why the question? What is it? Are you planning on doing something really spectacular for Halloween?
So, for the past, I want to say 5-6 years, I haven't done anything for Halloween. I just haven't been able to.
Because of work or what?
Sometimes it's because of work. Back in high school, it's because of FFA, the Future Farmers of America. Yeah, I used to be in that. And the national convention landed right on Halloween a couple times. Or I just didn't have any plans. I just couldn't find people that wanted to do things. And so I've had spectacular Halloween costume ideas for years, and I just haven't been able to haven't really been able to capitalize on that. But this is my year. I swear to it. I think this is gonna be it.
Is that some showmanship that lurks somehow in your psyche that you want to express? I mean, why do you think about Halloween costumes, and what is it?
You know, I think all of us have a little bit of a showmanship in us, honestly.
Or you wouldn't want to really be in front of a microphone like this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Unfortunately for all of our listeners, we don't have a face cam, so they can't see all the glory that is us. So far, if there's anybody who doesn't know us who's listening to this, we're nothing more than just faceless voices.
Right.
But there's a certain amount of joy that comes from, obviously, the intention that you get from being eccentric and out there and a showman. And so I feel like Halloween is a really spectacular time for those people to shine.
You're right. I agree with that totally. Yeah.
It gives people a platform and essentially a stage for them to go all out in this very interesting way. I've seen a lot of people who get very into their costumes, really into their characters that they decided to put on. And it's very wholesome to think about it like that. To think that, we just get this one time a year to dress up and be whoever the hell we want to be. And it's an interesting time. And I like the culture around Halloween far more than I do most other holidays, personally.
Well, it does give you permission to dress however you want. And I was never one of them, but I have friends who were very creative in coming up with costumes and would spend maybe a couple of months planning it out and then creating it, sewing it, or whatever.
There were a lot of people go real hard for Halloween. I remember back when I was a kid, me and my family, we would look up just these do-it-yourself Halloween costumes every year. And we would go to my grandma's to make them. Sometimes they didn't work out, sometimes they did. They obviously looked handmade and homemade and everything, but that's the point. That's the fun of it. You get to just wear this shitty little costume that you made, and you get to be proud, and you go door to door, you get candy, and it's wholesome. That's all I can really say about that.
I had an experience of Halloween a few years ago that has stayed with me because there is kind of a transition that happens from childhood to adulthood around Halloween, where when you're a kid you have the opportunity to go door to door and ask for something and be rewarded for that. Somebody's going to give you a Snickers bar or something like that, and you don't even know them.
Right.
And I think that for a kid, it shows a dimension that isn't often understood because people, strangers particularly, don't typically give you stuff without expecting something in return. So anyway, then what happens, it seems, is that you get to a certain age where you realize, oh my God, I'm too old to go.
It's the worst thing to feel.
Yeah.
Honestly. It's funny. Trick-or-treating is the one time of year, the one instance where you can ignore your parents when they say, don't take candy from strangers. And so the reward of so much candy just given to you. You didn't have to put in squat for effort. And you just knock on a door, hold out a bag, and you just get rewarded.
And it's dark, and there's street lights, and maybe there's mist in the air because it's getting into late fall.
Always spooky.
Oh, yeah, you just have this opportunity to run around in the dark. But a couple of years ago, I was helping a friend hand out candy. And a young couple, I don't think that they could have been more than 20 years old, a guy and his wife and their little baby.
Wow.
And they didn't have costumes on. But I thought it was the most tender, poignant thing that they were sort of superficially pretending like they were showing the baby Halloween, but I think with the burden of now being parents and the tug of their childhood right there, they wanted to experience it.
They wanted it back.
One more time. And it just seemed darling to me.
Why do you think we have this idea that there's a too old for Halloween?
Oh, I think it runs in some people's conservative souls. You know, I think if an older person comes to the door at night, you realize they might have the power to overwhelm you, especially if they're in a mask or something. And I think there might be an element of threat in there.
Okay.
And so they say, I don't want to see any teenagers, that is, older teenagers at the door. I mean, I'm okay if a 6-year-old comes with the parents out on the street. That's safe. And I think it's something like that. I think it's personal threat, maybe.
Personal threat that you can far easier kick a child in the stomach than you can
Well,
kick
I don't know if it comes to that level, but yeah. It's sort of that kind of thing.
It's far easier to beat up a child, Jim Newman. And
Yeah, right.
That's interesting. Personal threat as the reason that we think there's a too old for Halloween.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of validity in that statement where, you know, fear, I mean, it is the spookiest time of the year, so fear is rampant, and it does give a certain amount of chance and possibility for people to do a weird amount of things. But
Well, did you ever, I mean, whether it was Halloween or not, go around your neighborhood and disrupt things like wax somebody's windows or ring somebody's doorbell and run away? I did that, I have to admit. And it wasn't just Halloween. So,
just regular
I mean,
prankster.
Yeah,
Did you ever light a bag of poop on fire and put it at someone's door?
I don't remember actually doing that, but I know about it.
Okay.
I mean, there were families in the neighborhood that we considered our enemies. I don't know. That's just the human condition, really.
Yeah.
And
You've always gotta be against someone.
Right, and so we warred against these certain people in the neighborhood. And night tends to be a free time. You can almost, well, you can pretend that you're invincible then, and there's no way you can be caught, and you can disappear into the dark, and so it gives you kind of power as a kid,
Right.
I guess.
See, it was different in my neighborhood.
Well, you were in the country with a lot of distance between the houses, right?
Not quite. We
No?
were in the gray area of not quite urban, but not quite rural. It was like we were the gray area. We were the space. We were the buffer between those two areas. It was fascinating. But the way that my neighborhood is that it was right along the highway. You take a right, and it's a giant circle. It's this big mile-long circle neighborhood where there's one entrance, one exit.
Really? Like a giant cul-de-sac kind of thing? Wow.
And so
You couldn't mess with those people. They know who you are.
Exactly. There was, in my neighborhood, I think there was probably a dozen kids, maybe, give or take, depending on the year. And so if you were to prank any amount of people in this neighborhood, also additionally everyone had pretty freakishly long driveways, so that was a rough one. They would know. I mean, we were very obviously the kids of the neighborhood, and you know, we would ride our bikes around, or we would do stuff in the backyards, or run around, do that kind of thing. And I mean, we would be recognized. And so if I went up to someone's doorbell, rang it, and then tried sprinting away the half mile that is their driveway, I couldn't get away with it. And so I just never did.
So were you ultimately a good kid, either because of social pressure or otherwise? Maybe that's just your inclination anyway.
I think my parents did a good job of instilling a certain amount of fear in me for if I did something bad. And so they taught me my realms of morality. And Sure, I have chosen to bend those rules to my fitting, how I see fit, a little bit, but not so far outside of what they have told me that it would be detrimental to me.
Yeah, well, I don't think I had any criminal intent, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I behaved antisocially in the neighborhood. I also would dial phone numbers and do stupid
Ooh, classic prank
jokes.
calls.
Yeah, you know.
I feel like prank calls have diminished.
Well, it's all cell phone and nobody
That's
answers.
that's true. That's true.
You do not want to prank an answering machine or a voicemail.
Yeah, no, they got your number now.
It doesn't have quite the impact.
There was a way back in, I want to say like a decade ago, 6 years ago, around when I got my first cell phone, where if you dialed, I believe it was like *9 and then dialed whoever's number, you would
Oh,
show
you
would
could
show up
hide?
as an unknown number.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I wonder if it's still there.
I hope not, or else we just gave away some very damaging information for people to use. But I don't know if that's a thing, but we would use that a lot, but we weren't very good at it. We did it once or twice, and it was only to people that we knew in our school, and it was the most pathetic half-assed attempt at pranking anything
Yeah.
that I've ever done, and it was sad. So I don't know. What was your success in your pranking years?
I was not a big success. This is kind of embarrassing. I one time pretended that I was the manager of a radio station, and someone had written the newspaper dissing this particular station, and I called, and I had a friend who had a higher voice than me pretend to be the secretary, and then I got on the line and chewed this kid out for saying something really bad about the radio station. And it got in the paper because, of course, the kid thought it was real, and then he ratted out me, or he thought the manager of the station
What a
to the
snitch.
newspaper, and it became quite the thing, and we were so proud of ourselves.
You gotta be proud of that.
For
You got in the
having-
newspaper. That's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Oh, it was. And sometimes we'd get on the radio. We'd call the radio station, and the DJ would talk about us. And,
Oh my
oh
god.
yeah, right.
That's incredible. I feel the pranks of today don't match up to that anymore, and it's sad. But that is fascinating.
I don't
I
know.
can't believe you did that. Oh man.
It was a kind of validation. I mean, it was a way of to ourselves being special, and there was, I think, a performance element to it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I was having to act that role, and I didn't realize till much, much later in life that inherently I am an actor.
Okay.
I
yeah.
really like doing stuff where I play a different role and become a different person.
Pretend you're not you for a bit.
Yeah, but I've looked at my life, and it's clear to me that in the Army, for example, once I realized what flew for the people in the Army, I mean, anyone who was superior to me had power over me,
Right.
and they could make my life really
miserable. Yeah.
miserable if they wanted to. But if you reflected some kind of thing that told them that you were on board and you were supportive of them, that was a way of looking them in the eye, word choice, then the power shifted. And I turned out to have considerable power in those situations because they stopped looking at me like someone that had to be disciplined. They looked at me as someone who was supportive, even though, I mean, I was kind of like a spy, inherently pretending, really just acting to be on board with it.
The power of subservience.
Yeah, that's true. It was. It was. I mean, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd salute and I'd stand up straight and I'd look them in the eye and I would have this kind of, I think, admiring expression on my face or something.
But behind the eyes, in the mind, you're calling him an asshole the whole time, right?
Well, or I'm noticing things about him that I don't respect. I mean, I'm thinking you're a wuss or whatever I'm thinking.
Right.
You know, and only pretending that they had my full admiration. And it was a way to get through, but I mean, the Army was a wonderful training ground for people because unlike my high school or the church that I grew up in or my family, which had this kind of narrow white cultural bias of a certain kind, Protestant religious people.
There's one kind of person.
Yeah. You get in the Army, and there's all kinds of human beings that I'd never had any experience of before, and some of them, oh my God, they'd say shit. And they were like 35, 40, 45. These were real adults. I'm only 20 at this time. And I had never heard an adult say fuck before in my life.
Whoa.
And it was like, in some strange way, I don't know exactly how it works in someone's brain, but it opened up doors. It made me see that I'd been sort of in a bubble all my life. Yeah. So I don't know if you've had any similar kind of freeing experience like that, you being 20.
So, kind of like what I talked about before with the country music, and that was the only thing that I listened to for a long time. I mean, country music is clean. It always has been, and in my mind, it usually always is.
Yeah.
I can name a few songs that are vile and pretty decrepit, that are country-esque.
Right, but they're not the old style.
Yeah. And so, when I first heard music that swore, that it was explicit.
Right, and it could be heavy metal, it could be really hard rock, could be lots of things. Yeah,
it was metal.
Right.
My buddy Mason back home, he listened to, at the time, who was cool, like Disturbed or Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah, actually, they're still kind of cool.
They're still kind of cool. But looking back on it, I feel far more edgy than I do now about it. But they were my first experience of music swearing.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind.
Really?
To think that, like, you can do this? Like,
over a speaker?
Yeah, like, you're giving this out to, like, children are listening. I'm 9. Like, I don't know how old I was in 3rd grade. Third grade?
In 6th grade, you're 12, so you might be right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm 9 years old, and I'm listening to all these heavy metal guys and all these rap guys, you know, saying fuck and shit and bitch and all these other nasty things. And it's like, I'm allowed to listen to this. Like, I have the opportunity to just understand this. And it was changing for me. It was very transformative.
In what way? Freeing, or did it just embarrass you? And then you thought, were you reactionary and want to use fewer swear words because of that, or what did it do to you?
Okay,
transformative wise.
So when I was a kid, I was kind of a goody two shoes.
Okay.
I was not allowed in the household to say but or sucks or any
of those marginally
word. Yeah. And so I grew up pretty prissy, I guess, or at least in my language.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I grew up, that definitely changed, and that was heavily reinforced by the fact that all the music I listened to was clean too. It was all, they didn't swear. Oh, you heard a damn every once in a while, or maybe a hell.
And you noticed it.
Oh, we noticed it. It was like, whoa, this is a dirty song. I don't know if I could be in the same room as this anymore. But as soon as I realized that you know, all these other genres and all the TV shows and the movies and everything, you know, fuck this, fuck that. It was freeing to me, is what it was. I didn't really know how to react to it at first, because I was like, these people can say it, but they're adults, right? They can't say it. They're allowed to.
But were they worse people for it?
No.
In your view? You didn't
Not
think
in the
that?
slightest. No.
Okay.
So, yeah, I feel like that's a very important distinction to make. They weren't worse off because they were doing it. They were adults, so they had the opportunity to.
Okay.
Once again, I was 9. And so, as I kind of got through elementary school and I started listening to this music more, to my friends, I was a sailor mouth. Absolutely. I will admit to it. I was a potty mouth. It was terrible. It was a lot of... What's that?
Anybody ever call you on that?
No, that's the thing, because everyone else was too.
Oh.
That's the thing. All my friends and all the people I was around, they were potty mouths. Absolutely.
Oh my God! This is Damascus, Oregon, ladies and gentlemen.
This isn't just Damascus. This is elementary school.
What?
In general, absolutely.
9-year-olds, people.
I mean, if you were secretly listening in to the conversations that I believe elementary school kids have now, or at least the ones that I had long time ago, we said some stupid things. I'm just glad we were in an era where none of that shit was recorded, like what we're doing now. But
Well,
but I never said it around adults, because kids weren't allowed to swear.
right. And you were going to get called on, for sure.
I would get in trouble for doing that.
Yeah.
And so I would put on my best face, and I would put on my mask of
Prissiness.
prissiness.
Right?
I was the clean-mouthed, good kid around, you know, all the adults. But as soon as they left the room, you know, the mice will play when the cat's away. And sure enough, it was a fuck storm. Just constantly. There was a running joke. There was a running joke that me and my friends had where we thought it would have been hilarious, just, the funniest thing, if there was a kid who came into class whose name was Fuck You.
And the teacher would have to say,
yeah.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Do you have anything to say about this?
Or one of those things where it's like, oh, hey, what's your name? Fuck you. Excuse you. No. And that whole, we would die
big
for
laughs.
years. Oh, man, it was so funny to us.
Right.
And so, but I guess the more I mature and the more I grow up, the more I realize that I don't need to be doing that. I don't have to be. So it's interesting. What do you think about this?
Well, let me tell you how my exposure to swear words in the Army changed me. Because when I first heard that, I was coming from this religious background and really what I now think of as a bubble, and there were no swear words almost ever. Maybe I heard some accidentally on the school bus in high school,
Ooh,
right?
School bus is a
Or
whole other.
even college. But then there are adults saying you're nothing but a bunch of shit. You know, I'm talking about people yelling at the new recruits who are in basic training, and you have like a 47-year-old man that's got the stripes, and he's lean and tough and loud, and he's calling you a fuckwad, right?
Cool.
And it's like, I could not believe that people were addressing me
Yeah.
in that kind of language, you know? But my takeaway now, looking back, and I think, you know, maybe it's an embarrassment, but I actually swear a lot more than some of my friends.
Oh, yeah.
I notice that where I'll throw in a fuck to emphasize something, it's an adjective enhancer to me to say fuck.
Right.
It's fucking, and it makes it more powerful.
Yeah.
To me, it's a communication device,
Right.
is what I think. But
Because
a
it's
lot of
the
people don't.
strongest- Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't. It's the strongest word that you can use, essentially.
I agree, and it's wonderful that it's there for that reason, in my opinion.
I believe fuck is the most powerful, universally used word. I mean, you can put it anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You can use it in any context.
Exactly.
And it's useful. And it's fascinating because, I mean, the more that I think about it, the more that we use it as a society in general, the less powerful it becomes.
Maybe, but thank God, one of my best friends has kids now.
Yeah.
And I don't recall him ever using a lot of swear words, but now I'm aware that when I say fuck in front of him, even if family isn't around, I'll bet you he's noticing that. And I'm thinking that maybe he's calculating whether or not I might accidentally say that in front of his kids. In other words, I think that some parents, well, I don't even know their motivation because I'm not one, but they seem to see the use of swear words as something that will be debilitating to their children, maybe just when they're kids, I don't know, but they ban it. And so what you're saying about those words being used too much, I don't know that that'll ever really happen.
I don't know if it's necessarily used too much, but it's used in a way where we're becoming more desensitized to it, I guess.
Well, okay, in some circles,
Yeah.
maybe. But it's still, I guess my point is, it's still a taboo, and it's still a taboo that is passed along by people that I like a lot.
Yeah.
And I know I communicate with them, but they don't communicate saying fuck at all.
Right.
You know, and I'm not sure I understand that because it seems to be that, yes, if the child is around and you don't want your 5-year-old to come out with a fuck in grade school, then it's probably sensible to not let them hear the word. But as I say, he doesn't use, and he's not the only one. I know other people. I just noticed, I don't know, there's a distinction to be made, and I don't know what it is. People who use swear words and people that don't.
That's a heavy one.
Really?
Oh, I would think so.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I've heard a lot of different people say that the use of swear words almost directly correlates to intelligence, which I find entirely wrong.
Well, walk me through that correlation. You're dumb if you use it, you mean?
Essentially, that's...
Really?
So, the way that it was described to me is the more swear words you use in a sentence, the lesser your IQ is.
You know why?
Quote, unquote.
Because it shows an absence of vocabulary. You couldn't think of a better word, so you had to say fuck. See, but that's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. You can use any amount of words, and the swears are just what emphasize.
Answer,
yeah.
exactly.
It's emphasis at this point. It would be ridiculous to assume that me as a person, if I said fuck 20 times in a row, that I'm less of a human.
Because he couldn't think of any, he had to come up with 20 words, but the only one he could think of was fuck.
There's only
there's
one that
not
came to
any
mind.
logic to that at all.
I mean, let's think of a scenario for a second. If I were walking around at night, you know, I need to get some water, and I jam my shin against, I don't know, a coffee table, whatever, the classic.
Yeah.
And I go, fuck, what the hell was that?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I less because I said that? Was I, you know, I hit my table and gee willikers, oh darn, shucks, frick, I don't know. It doesn't make a difference what you say in this. I feel like you still are the same level of intelligence just because you said a different word.
I just thought I take a lot of acting classes.
Yeah.
And I noticed that in scripts, which we memorize for various reasons, the more modern playwrights use fuck and shit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in the acting classes, the teachers and the students use swear words all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in these classes, and I include myself in this, are trying to express themselves. So that's one reason that I believe that it only, to use swear words, to say shit sometimes, it only enhances the communication because it ratchets up the intensity.
Oh, okay, yeah.
God damn it, I mean it.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that if I said, I don't like that, or if I said, that's a bunch of shit,
Right, yeah. I mean, it definitely, it pushes the idea. It really drills down that this is something that you do not like. Very
No,
clear.
I don't think you can escape that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, swears are fun. You know what? I'm just going to come out and say it. Swears are fun. And they're fun to say. They're fun to use. Granted, situationally, contextually, they need to be controlled a little bit.
If you go to the preacher's house for dinner,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I would use swear words.
But if I'm at home drinking with my dad, you can bet there's going to be some foul language at play. And it's so fun.
All right, so in other words, that's one way you guys bond by showing each other that you're the same kind of person? You make the same kind of decision about that?
So a joke that a joke that me and my father have between each other is, we'll just come up to each other and just say, "Hey, go fuck yourself." And then he'll say, "Hey, go fuck yourself." And then it's just a back and forth until we keep on laughing.
No! Fuck you!
Yeah.
I actually had that with a photographer I work with. So, no! Fuck you!
No, fuck you. And I do the same thing with Willis. It's just sometimes like, "Hey, Willis, fuck you."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Willis
yeah,
responds, "Hey,
yeah.
no, I didn't. Fuck you. Fuck you." And
Right,
it's just,
right,
it's an
right.
interesting amount of bonding that comes from just a very select amount of vocabulary.
So, what I want to know is, if and when we post these podcasts, are we going to get a parental notification on our label because we said the word fuck a number of
lot of
times?
times.
As I remember, we said it quite frequently during this podcast.
I'm fairly certain we've said fuck a couple fucking times.
Yeah.
And
So
so
I don't know. I mean, it's like, I don't know if using that kind of language really offends people these days. I guess it does.
that's subjective as to who it offends. I mean, if you came up to me on the street and you just said fuck to me, whatever.
And
I
didn't know you. You didn't know me.
Yeah, I don't.
See,
It
that
doesn't
is-
matter. Because I've become so desensitized to it a little bit. I understand its emphasis and I understand the strength behind it, but we can only give words the amount of strength that we decide to give them.
Mhm.
And so if someone came up to me and just said fuck or called me a cunt, I don't know.
Well,
I
the
just-
aggression behind it might
Yeah.
alert you.
I mean, obviously I'm going to question why you as a person are coming up to me and just saying
Right,
this.
and what is my intention after that language? It's almost like
Yeah.
a warning shot.
Right, but if you also came up to me and in a very aggressive tone were just hot dogs,
Yeah,
and I'm going
true.
to question that shit too. I mean,
Right.
why are you so mad? Why are you so mean to me? Why are you saying these things? It doesn't matter what you're saying. It truly doesn't.
No,
It matters how you're saying it.
Right.
And I think that's a very important distinction that needs to be made, especially with the language that is used nowadays, is that, yes, there are some terrible words. Yes, that happens. We give them that power, though. But also, depending on how you're saying it can change that word entirely. I know culturally, at least, or this is a stereotype, meme, whatever, the amount of times that Australians use the word cunt.
Oh, really? I mean, down on that big continent or whatever it is down there, I mean, is it commonly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the same exact way that I'd go up to Willis and say, fuck you, and he'd say, fuck you back. I mean, they're just say, hey, cunt, and they say it back. Hey, cunt. And it's just natural for them.
Right.
And I don't mean to be stereotypical or anything, but I mean, in my adventures or explorations of current social media and some of those things, and I've met an Australian or 12, it holds true.
Right.
And I don't know who might be offended by that. I apologize if anybody's offended by that, but I mean that's what I know. That's my experience with that.
Right, and that's what we're trying to express here and have for the last while. I see that we're somewhere around.
Yeah, we're hitting the 40
minutes.
Here. Man, time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
This is wild. I don't know if time has been flying for y'all listening to this, but we're having a good time.
We are like an experiment here. We are trying to find our way, and it's based on the fact that we have fun talking to each other and have in our imagination the idea that you enjoy it too.
Or else you wouldn't be listening.
And we hope that we at some time will communicate with you and you can give us feedback.
Yeah.
Tell us to fuck off or whatever.
Yeah, just tell us to go fuck ourselves. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for episode 3 here. I had a spectacular time, Jim, with this.
Good, man. I
hope
too.
you did too.
Yeah, I did.
Feel free to find us, contact us with any kind of feedback that y'all have, with topics, questions, anything like that. We'd love to bring it up and see what y'all have to think.
See, and as time goes on, this might just be a very heavily produced podcast with, music and theme song.
Actual editing.
And that kind of stuff.
Maybe ad space. We'll do ad space.
Exactly. We'll, ratchet it down, break for the commercial. But we're not doing that now.
Not yet. This is still free for everyone. All right. Well, Jim, go fuck yourself.
Hey, fuck you, man.
Fuck you.
And I'll see you guys later.